It's pretty easy to see that Kyle Busch is one of the best drivers in all of NASCAR history, let alone the modern era. And for the longest time, for almost 15 years at JGR and Hendrick Motorsports, he's been one of the top drivers, especially in his JGR tenure, being a guy that was up front, running for wins, championships, and every accolade under the sun that the sports had to offer. And while he hasn't gotten every one of them, he has cemented himself as a driver that will never be forgotten in the history of the sport. And much of that time was in the yellow and rainbow colors of the M&M's Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing, that number 18 car being one of the most iconic cars in NASCAR history. But towards the end, well, he was winning once or twice a year, wasn't really a championship contender, wasn't even the best guy or maybe even second best guy at his own team, and it was just clear that Kyle Busch's time there had grown possibly to an end at that moment and also very stale. And with it, there was a breakup. And while things have been patched up and smoothed over now in the media, with fans, and in public, it very much was an ugly breakup. Gibbs was moving on to his grandson, Ty, which many saw at face value being just a silver spoon kid getting a ride over a legend because he costs less and because he's the grandson of the team owner. But there was sponsorship fallout, there was issues all around, and then on top of all of that, Kyle Busch just was ready for a change. But this wasn't the only place there was an ugly breakup. The ugliest one being between Tyler Reddick, the former driver of the number 8 car, and the owner of that car and owner of Richard Childress Racing, Richard Childress. The two of them had built something very special at RCR, and for the first time in almost a decade, the team was looking like a viable threat almost every other week. While not to the level they were with guys like Kevin Harvick, Clint Boyer, or Jeff Burton, they still were pretty darn good. And at that point, it was pretty shocking to see Reddick jump ship pretty much without telling Childress to the last possible second over to Toyota and leaving the 8-team high and dry. Both of these subject guys in Childress and Busch were probably rightfully pissed about their situations, needing a fresh start on both levels, and ultimately it made sense for both of them. Busch coming over and bringing KBM, and starting a new era with Richard Childress in the 8 car. Now, so far this season, it has been a pretty good one in all things considered for Kyle Busch. He in 15 starts has 3 wins, the same as Joe Gibbs Racing does as a whole this year, and tied for first in NASCAR, 4 top 5s, 8 top 10s, though 3 DNFs, but he's 7th in points with almost 200 laps led. Now, one thing that people will really consider and compare here is the 2008 season for Kyle Busch, the last time that he went to a team for a fresh start after a relatively ugly breakup with Hendrick Motorsports. In that, he had 4 wins in the same amount of starts with 9 top 5s, 10 top 10s, a DNF, almost 800 laps led, and a firm grasp on the points lead at the time. But there's some intangibles that are a bit different this time around that are both good and bad for Kyle Busch's revenge tour. See, Busch has been on fire, I think, compared to recent years, having the most wins since 2019 when he won the championship, and being almost on the same pace he was in 2008, a year he won 8 races. And when you look also at the way that things have changed in the sport, it honestly isn't too different because he's pretty much insured in both to make the playoffs or the chase and run for a championship. And all of this right now is because of his wins. Busch's 3 wins are 3 very different ones, but I think offer insight into what the rest of his season and possible championship aspirations entail. The first one coming at the Auto Club Speedway, possibly the last ever race at the 2-mile track. This race was pretty impressive for him. His second start with RCR saw him go out and beat not only Ross Chastain, but also Chase Elliott. These 2 drivers being either one of the top 3 in the series, as in Elliott, or one being the breakout star of the previous season that had been in the top 5 for almost the entire year. He ran good, he ran away with the win, getting stronger as the day went on, and his number 8 Chevy won by 3 seconds, which in the next-gen era has been honestly really big. And it's a good track for Kyle Busch, so it shows that when everything's in his favor, he can easily win again with this new team. It was a statement showing that Busch, in a lot of ways, was back. But that's nothing really compared to the second one, which, in all honesty, for Busch's career, has been an odd version of a win for him. If it was anyone but Busch, with the tenure he had had at super speedways in the last couple years, or decade even, this would be a pretty easy one to see from far away. Of course, Busch was leading the 500-mile mark of the Daytona 500, and he's been really good on the super speedways with RCR, which has been different than most of his career since 2008 when he won 2 super speedway races in that season. What is big with this one is because of stage points and playoff points being such a big deal, and with how close the championship battle is for the regular season title, this will offer a great opportunity when others fail for him to get points in the regular season and to get playoff points. So this is a big deal that he's good at Talladega, because you still have Atlanta and Daytona left before the playoffs and another Talladega race left in the playoffs. So this is a big ingredient for the Revenge Tour. And then, of course, you have this past weekend at Gateway. This is another one that was honestly pretty easy for many to see. You see, at Gateway, he had finished second in 2022 before winning this past year. But the way he won was honestly really impressive, because even though Kyle Larson had 2 tires and Busch had 4 fresh ones, he was able to beat the 5, who is probably one of the best, if not the best driver out there, and also restarters out there, multiple times, run away from him, have the best car, and beat Hendrick cars, Penske cars, Gibbs cars, you name it. Cars that honestly probably should have been better than his. He led 121 laps, which is a statement as well, because for the first time in 10 years, he led tons and tons of laps en route to an RCR win. The last time this many laps or more were run for a win was Harvick, leading 138 laps in 2013 in the playoffs race at Kansas. So this has all been really good for Busch. But where does it go from here? Well, I think there's 3 things to look at here. First off, Busch as an older driver has become a much better closer at the end of the season than he did at his younger age in 2008 to 2014. Unlike 2008, I don't see Busch completely collapsing in the playoffs unless it's completely out of his control. Plus, this is a system that, whether it be for wins or just lesser drivers making the playoffs, can be more forgiving to mistakes at the end of the season. So that's probably a point in his favor. Now, a point against him is that RCR, no matter how well he's running in it, is not a superpower. He is getting the most out of those cars. We see what happened last year with Reddick, and we've seen Austin Dillon in these cars. So we know that Busch is going a bit above and beyond what is expected to be run of these cars, and that could hold him back as the season goes on. But there's a point in his favor to come up in the fact that the playoff era is a much different era than the 12-man chase era. He is going to be able to score stage wins. These wins will add throughout the playoffs, not just at the very start. And if he does run up front, the better he is in points will help him out during the playoffs. So I think that it's still a very positive look, and I'm going to stick with my prediction at the start of the year and say I think he gets at least 6 wins on this season. But with that, I'm going to pass it on to you. What do you think is in store for the rest of Kyle Busch's Revenge Tour? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support, and until next time, have a good one.